And we are live. Welcome to the 5th episode of Tiny Table Talk. I'm John.
I'm Taya.
And today we're going to do something a little bit different. So today we're going to do our first deep dive where we talk about some of our design philosophies, thinkings, and our processes behind making some of the mechanics, the masteries, and all different kinds of stuff in that is on in Aeons of Adventure. Right. And so today we're going to go through our very first deep dive on the masteries, right? And our very first one that we'll be doing is the Bladearts. So before we begin, right, what exactly are our masteries?
So, mastery are skills and techniques that is used in combat. So think of them like in other RPGs you'll be like, oh, I'm swinging my sword. But here, because we want the more JRPG inspired like action gameplay type, so we have like techniques in a way. So it's like, oh, it's like I will use a certain attack called like cleave or something like that. Yeah. So these are all classified into these are all techniques that is classified into families of trees. Like, so for example, like Bladearts is one of them.
Yeah. All right. So if you guys are familiar with like Final Fantasy Tactics or all kinds of like turn-based games where you have classes and characters with jobs and then they have specific skills, like let's just say a fighter may have like power slash. You may see this in MMOs as well. This is what the mastery system is trying to encapsulate, right? Where instead of having I buff your basic attack 7 times, I give you a new version of it, or a
Attack
different
seven, yeah.
that might hit 7 times
Yeah.
maybe, right? So that's kind of like the rough gist of what the mastery is trying to serve. It is a replacement to the class system in Aeons of Adventure because we don't have a class system. What we do instead is we have a point system where you gain mastery points per level and a set of 3 when you start your character at level 1, and you get to put points into the different masteries. So in Aeons of Adventure, we have the basic set. We have a total of 12 different masteries available right off the bat, each with 5 different skills, 5 different levels. And on top of that, we still have 3 armor masteries and 5 racial masteries. So you can mix and match from different masteries available, right? And so today we'll go through our very first one, the Bladearts. So why don't we begin? Like, what exactly is Bladearts specifically? What are we
So-
trying to achieve here?
So first of all, blade to put it like very clearly, like blade arts is actually a techniques and skill that is associated with a type of weapons. So this type, for this particular one, it'll be like swords and axes.
Yep.
So, and these are not one-handed. We are talking about both one-handed and two-handed versions of it. So two-handed axe and two-handed swords. One-handed axe, one-handed swords. Yeah. So stuff like that are all classified under blade arts.
Does that mean that skills that are obtained in the Bladearts mastery applies to both one-handed and two-handed weapons?
So in our the technique itself, there will be a different ways to show the damage type when you're holding it one-handed versus when you're holding it two-handed.
Right, we'll see that later in the preview, right? So Bladearts mastery, as Dayang mentioned, we have axes, we have swords, and there are certain weapons that can also have the bladed property or family. So in Aeons of Adventure, masteries are classified into martial, magic, and specialists. Right, so martial are masteries that require a weapon of some sort or are usually physical. A magical mastery is one that is determined by the element or the family of the spells. And the last one, which is specialist, is given to all of the categories that don't quite have a solid family that they fit under. So Bladearts is the mastery that falls under the martial category that deals with the bladed family of weapons, right? Well, not family. Yes, family of weapons.
It's a
that's
very
right.
technical explanation. Yes.
Yes. So you, when you get your hands on the rulebook, you might realize that some weapons may have a certain family and property types, and that is what determines whether they can use a Bladearts mastery skill. So you might have weapons in the future that may be more than one family, allowing you to use both Bladearts skills and perhaps something else. All right, so let's start diving a little bit deeper into it. Okay. So, Bladearts mastery. What is it? Right? So we have this tiny little description over here that you're going to have to squint to take a little look at. Right? But I'm going to read it out for you. Maybe. Hold up. I need to.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So what are Bladearts? Bladearts is when you wield the blade with a flowing grace. You can slice through your enemies with arcs that belie their deadly force. So you can imagine kind of like this, like wuxia, xianxia kind of thing, where you're carving through your enemies, or maybe you might be thinking of like Gromhell Scream in Warcraft, where he's like cutting through his with the forces with a massive axe, right? And it comes with things like parries, counters, and of course high damage flurry of attacks, right? The Bladearts that we're focusing on in the basic set is more catered towards the archetype of faster strikes rather than big heavy blows, right? That's not to say that you can't do that, nor that we don't that we don't intend to do that in the future, but with the limited number of skills that we can provide in the basic set, that is what we are currently focusing on. And you will see this trend throughout the different mastery deep dives, where they typically have one or two kind of core aspects that we're trying to really hone in on, and we keep those aspects at the lower level so that you can mix and match the different masteries. Right. And so, with the basic set, Bladearts come with 5 different skills, and you can see them over there. They're Reave, Quick Slash, Deliverance, Mighty Throw, and Riposte. Now you can imagine what these things are gonna do based on their names alone, right? But what's more interesting is what's that on the left over there? What's Bladeart rank?
So I mean, it's called a blade arts mastery. So when we are designing this, right, we treat it as like a skill tree thing. So this what that means is you have a progression in it. So for example, like blade arts rank 0 means you can get it without any prior investment. And for example, blade arts rank 1 requires a single point investment in the mastery itself. Yeah, and so on and so forth lah.
All right, so Bladeart rank is actually the required rank that you have, basically. All right, so Reef requires you to currently have a 0 rank in Blade Arts. And how do you rank up your Blade Arts?
So I mean, we have with every level up and stuff like that, right, you get this thing called mastery points. So when you spend a single mastery point and pick up a certain skill, they'll give you one mastery one point into the tree where it increases the rank instead.
And so besides this, right? So this is what this thing is actually snipped out from the rulebook itself. So this is something that you might see for all of the masteries in the rulebook. The wording is not final, but this is what we have currently, right? And so on top of the type of skills that you have there, and then a rough description of what the masteries are, it also comes along with this is not a class. This is a recommendation of different masteries that will allow you to achieve a certain type of fantasy, and they're just suggestions. So, for example, in this case here, we have like the Slayer, and the Slayer is you can think of from Hellscream from Warcraft, right? So he's this guy. He barely wears any armor. He's going around and he's cutting through the enemies. He's whirlwinding and stuff like that. So, if you want to create a character like this, the suggestion that we have here is, okay, you can take Blade Arts as a mastery and Cloth Armor as a mastery and combine them together. Whereas, for example, the second one could be something more like more anime JRPG kind of inspired, where you have like this flaming swordsman kind of mage knight thing, and because of the skills that are available in both the Flame and the Blade Arts mastery, by combining the two masteries along with the heavy armor one, you're able to achieve this fantasy of being this magic knight who's wearing heavy armor and a flaming sword, right? So, just to be clear, these are suggestions. These are not rules. You don't have to follow them. They don't provide you any special bonuses for doing these things. They just sound cool,
So,
right?
adding on to that is like these are actually just ideas that is these are examples that we are showing, right, to stimulate like your imagination into what fantasies that is very 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 achievable here. So we are trying to stick to like one pretty default ones and something that is like quite unique and specialized, like that you can't like almost play anywhere else. Something like that, yeah.
Yep.
So that was the direction we had with these examples. Yeah.
So this you can think of it as like a safe one, sort of like your barbarians, your wizards, your archers, your rangers, and then the other one's kind of out there, right?
Yeah.
To put it lightly. Okay, and so let's go on to our very first skill. Okay, and our very first skill is Reef. So what's Reef? How do I read this? How do I even begin to read this skill right here?
So this is actually what is also shown on the rulebook lah. Alright. So similarly, all this information will also be reflected onto the cards itself. And how do you read it from a stat block point of view is actually when you look at this, right, you have your name of the skill, then the text of the skill, what we call text. So like strike, it's a melee blade and versatile. Then it also tells you what type of skill this is, which in this case is a technique. The cost, the mastery requirement, the actual requirement, as well as the cost, like the combat cost. Yeah. Then right after that is all the effects, so like the damaging portion of it. Right. So previously,
right before we jump onto the effect, let's get the top part clear first. All right. So we have name, obviously, right? Reeve is the name, and then we have tags. So tags are you can think of them as like weapon properties, but then the properties are for the skills instead. So in this case, the properties of this skill is a strike. So what's a strike? A strike is where it's traditionally an attack roll. So you roll and then you hit the opponent's evasion. So that's what a strike means. You'll see that the trend with Blade Arts is most of the things are strike related because it's more of an active, like against the opponent kind of playstyle, or at least that's what we're supporting for now, right? The second thing is that this is a melee skill, so a melee skill requires a melee weapon, or something that is able to do a melee attack, right? And then it has blade. So blade here represents the actual family of weapons that's required to use the Bladearts skill. So this can be an axe, this can be a sword, and the property of blade itself is also on the weapon. So that's something that doesn't need any guesswork. If you have the weapon, if you have the weapon card, blade is on it as well. And versatile. Versatile means that it is able to be wielded with either one or two hands. So you can hold it in a single hand with a shield, you hold it with two hands and swing it, right? And so that's for properties and tags, right? The second thing is a skill type. So techniques are a category of skills, right? So skills have many different types. You have passives, you have ratios, you have spells, and then you have techniques. And there's probably some others I'm not remembering right now. But techniques is something that generally requires no spell casting, so it is not a spell, right? And usually is reserved for non-magical means. So that could be summoning a pet by calling a beast from forest, or striking with a weapon, right? So those are things that are techniques. Now the next thing, this is something that we haven't really gone through too much yet. SP costs. What's a SP cost here?
So SP cost here is stamina point cost, right?
Alright.
So actually this is the one that is the in combat relevance. So the way we are doing our combats, right, are based on stamina points, right? So we have previously mentioned this, which is like at the end of a turn you give back these stamina points, right? So this is exactly what you're talking about, which is each skill costs a certain X amount of points, and that X amount is stated here lah. So in the case of Rift, it costs 1 point per turn.
1 point per turn?
1 point, 1 point per card per usage.
Yeah, per use.
So this means that you have like 3 stamina points, right? You can use 3 types.
Alright. Yeah. So what's kind of like the reason that we decide to shift away from the classical action economy and take on this SP cost system?
So the very first one is just more options and more gameplay relevance lah. Not say relevance, but it's more of like more tactical. So what that entails is actually more of like in this turn I don't want to move. So that means I can actually don't move and attack more frequently. Or if I want to run away, I'm going to spend all my stamina running, right? So using the example just now which I mentioned, is like you have 3 stamina points. This means you can run away for 3 turns. Like you can use 3 stamina points worth of movement to run away.
In a single turn. Right.
Yeah.
So you can think of that kind of like the dash action in bonus action in Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, where let's just say you already used your move action and you still want to move and you're not doing anything else. You're not going to attack, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that. You just want to move again, right? With the stamina point system, you can do that, right? And that means that you're able to repeat actions if you like, which also means that combat goes, it can go pretty fast in a single turn. There's a potential for combat to be slightly swingy, but that is counteracted by a bunch of other factors that we might touch on later, right? And so SP basically allows for more tactical options here, where you can plan out your individual SPs more specifically, and it also solves one of the problems, which is a reaction, right? Which is when you react, sometimes it uses like a reaction, and then why can't I use this thing even though I didn't use the reaction this turn, X and Y and Z. And so in Aeons of Adventure, when you use a reaction, it just uses your SP depending on the reaction that you're using, and after you have used your reaction, the following turn you don't have that stamina point anymore. So that's kind of like the balancing act that we're doing here.
That is actually tied into the rule set of, because you gain your stamina at the end of your turn. Right. So that's the reason why.
Yep. Okay. And so the next thing is blade requirements. Mastery, right? So mastery, as we mentioned just now, it's the rank of your mastery. And then blade requirements, yes, you require to wield a blade when you're attacking with it. So you can't like put a blade on your back, take a bow, and hit the guy with the bow. It doesn't work like that, right? So you have to wield the blade. Okay, and MP cost. So MP here is not mana points.
Yeah.
It is mastery points, right? And this determines how much points you have to spend to learn a skill, right? Generally, most skills are going to be 1 point cost because that's
The
the
low
most
level stuff.
the lower level skills are all going to be 1 point cost. As we get into the higher level parts, then mastery point can the mastery points cost can fluctuate a little
But
bit.
also, it also will scale, not say scale, but it will reflect how powerful or how latent the skill is.
Yep.
In what I meant by that is like maybe, for example, using an example is like a normal reef is like 1 mastery point cost, so it does like 3 damage, right? And then maybe in the future there's like a super reef that costs like maybe 3 points, and then it's like doing like maybe 12 damage.
Wait, but doesn't that mean that like if I put a point into reef, right, then next time there's super reef, I can't, I've wasted this 1 point, no?
Not necessary. So there's a way to respec in a way. So I think that we'll touch on like much later lah. Yeah.
Right. So there is a mastery point respec system. Yes, you can rearrange your points, but you can't remove the mastery. So
Yes.
once you've taken Bladearts, you're Bladearts forever. Right. Unless you make a new character or you die. Right. And dying is not that difficult. All right. Oh wait. So okay. Before we jump onto that.
damage, yeah.
All right. Let's go on to the meat of the skill. All right. So the effect. Okay. So we know that reef is a strike, and we know that you're supposed to hit the guy. So what do all these things below mean? What are all these brackets and reds and blues and stuff?
Actually, what you just explained, all like with all the text and everything, is actually very well explained here as well. So it's very clear in telling you that it's a melee weapon strike. Okay. So melee is reflective, melee, and then weapon means it's like a weapon, right? And a strike means you're physically striking.
It's a strike, yes.
Right. So that is everything has been thought out with that in mind. So you can read this effect and you can basically, okay, I don't need to second guess anything. I read this, I know what I need to do or what I need to achieve this. Right?
Yep.
So moving on, dealing everything in a cone. So yes, and then dealing 3 bracket 4. So this is tied into the fact to just an explanation of like the versatile component of it, which means the one-handed and two-handed version. So one-handed is the one that's not in the bracket, and two-handed is when you're wielding the blade with 2 hands, right? You're doing the damage that is in the bracket. Yeah. And icons wise, for this graphic side, the red heart is damage, like health damage, and the broken armor looking thing, the blue one will be like armor penetration. Yeah.
Okay. So before we get into the effect, like the actual effect of the attack, right? What are those icons on the left?
So I was gonna say, so as you can see, there's three different effects right now, lah, right? So the damage, and then deal +1, and then deal another +1. So how do you actually read this is actually because our dice is a 2d6 roll, and we have the varying type successes. So success, a good success and a critical success. Yeah. Yeah, correct. So when you succeed, you get the first effect. And when you get a good success, which is when you roll a single natural 6, you get the second effect. And when you roll a crit success, which is 2 6s, you get the third effect. So that's the base explanation. And how does this actually work in game is actually, right, you add everything that is up to what you get. So what I meant by that is if you roll a 6 and a 4, for example, and it's a successful hit, you get both the first and the second effect. Yeah. And if you don't roll 6, then you just get the base effect lah, because you succeeded. Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of like the gist of strikes in general. So strikes, when you roll against the enemy, and then you get the success, which is the first effect. 1 6, 2 6s. So that's kind of like the simplified version of it, right? Now let's break it down a little bit. So like we have melee weapon strike. This entire skill, right, is basically I swing my melee weapon and then I hit in the cone, right? So that's explained in the effect itself. But if we break it down, so we have things that are bolded here. So melee weapon strike, those are tags, right? So melee representing that's melee, weapon you representing your weapon, and then strike representing a strike, right? So when it comes to these tags, right, they hold a bit of a baggage behind them. And these tags are explained in property lists and in our reference sheets. So melee here represents the melee range and the melee property of a weapon. However, what this also means is that if a weapon, right, if the weapon has a longer melee range, this is inherited by the skill. So, for example, we don't have a long range sword currently, but in the scenario that it does happen, foreshadowing, right? Your melee property from that weapon can be inherited by the skill. So your cone goes from 3 squares in front of you to the next 6 squares in front of you, right? And that's what the melee property actually entails, and what all these tags entails, which is that it inherits all these things from the weapons. And so in this case, weapon here represents that it uses everything from the weapon. Now, you might notice that, okay, so we have weapon and stuff like this, and traditionally, right, you may have used strength, or in our case, might, to roll to make this strike. So you roll the 2d6, you add them together, and you add might. But in this case, that's not strictly true, is it?
Not not strictly true is the correct word. Yeah.
So weapons come with so the weapons themselves have properties, and the weapons come with a property that determines what stat you use. For example, if you were to use a great sword, you might use might, yes. But if you were to use another type of weapon that is a finesse-based weapon or something else, right, you may use a different stat. So depending on the weapon you use, because of this weapon tag here, it inherits it determines what attribute you use to roll for the skill. Yeah, so for techniques, generally this is the case. You don't have an inherent attribute modifier that's chosen for you and is based on weapons, if weapons are being used. Now, there are exceptions, and spells are a totally different story here, right? But in this case, yes, it is based on the weapon. So if you use like a katana and the katana uses your dex, then yes, you use your dex. If you're using like this bulky great sword and then you swing it, yes, it uses your might, right? Or if you may use like a magical kind of great sword, you use something else, huh? Yeah, so that is what it means. So everything in a cone, so cone, yes, cone in front of you, right? Now dealing 3/4 here. So we don't have rolling. We don't have we don't need to roll for damage when we make a strike in Aeons of Adventure. When you make an attack, right? So you strike an enemy, you roll, and then the roll determines the damage already. So in this case, if it succeeds, then yes, you roll. You deal 3 damage if you're using it in one hand, and you deal 4 damage if you're reading with 2 hands. It's flat. However, as mentioned just now, if you get a great success effect, you add on these bonuses. So a lot of the damage is much more predictable, and this goes for the enemy side as well. There's no like weird variations except by the effects of other skills and other players and other monsters and creatures, right?
But those are still all expected because they are all flat numbers, and you don't have like some guy that's using the same skill doing like 3 times more damage than you.
Yep. Yeah. So the variance here lies within rolling for success, a great success, and a critical success. So that's where it lies, right? And so with that, so armor penetration. So this is one of those things that is it's something that we have chosen to do, which is that our defenses, we have armor and evasion, right? So we've touched on this before. Armor is a flat damage reduction, right? So if I hit you for 4 and you have 2 armor, you take 2 damage less, right? But in this case, so if I were to use my skill and then I roll a single 6, I have a great success effect, which is I gain 1 penetration. So in this cone, when I strike everybody, right, if they all have 1 armor or more, I will ignore that 1 armor and deal that damage directly instead. However, if the guy has no armor, this skill has no effect. Right, so that is kind of like the double-edged sword of having armor penetration, right? And so the last critical effect is you deal 1 more damage, right? And so that is the basic skill. So imagine, okay, so right now we have Bladearts, right? And Bladearts, you're using a sword and an axe, and your very first skill is an AoE cleave, right? And that is kind of like one of those things that we really wanted to push the fantasy of a mastery to as low of a level as possible, so that when you start picking up skills from the mastery, right, you immediately start feeling like, oh, this is the thing, right? This is how This is the fantasy.
the identity.
Yes, the identity of the
The
thing.
identity of this set. Correct.
Yep,
So I think like what we mentioned earlier, in the future when we releases more skills, we will explore more and more fantasies. And similarly we design in the same way where you are able to achieve this fantasy at low level and it only gets stronger from there. So the whole reasoning for this is because right, we don't want players to like have to invest like 6 points before they actually start playing the game. Because then why not just start at level 6 then?
Yep,
Correct.
yep.
Yeah. So that was the whole ideation and explanation for this lah. Yeah.
Yep, and on top of that, there's also a basic attack on the weapon itself. So the basic attack on the weapon actually represents your, well, basic attack, right? So there's no need for us to put a basic attack per se in the mastery. And instead, we just give you techniques directly, right? So that if for example you want to play a pure shield character who just happens to wield a sword, you still can, right? You just have less offensive options or less sword techniques that you may be able to use it with.
I think that's also a difference between our system in that you do not need mastery to use the weapon because the weapon has an attack.
Yep.
So
there's no proficiencies.
Yes. So for example, I recently just killed this boss and he drops a bow, but I don't have mastery in bow, right? So I could still use the bow. It's going to do a very basic damage, which may or may not be less than what I'm doing with my sword because I'm actually proficient and have mastery inside blades and swords, right? So it's a way to allow players to like still play around with other weapons. Yeah.
Right. I mean, on top of that, when you level up, you have a mastery point, right? If you haven't spent all your mastery points in different masteries, you have the option to actually just pick up the mastery itself. But that is limited by the amount of mastery points that you have, right? So it is there's a bit of a balancing act right
not
there.
only mastery points that you have, but also by the number of trees that you can have at in total.
Right.
Yeah.
You're limited to a total of 3 core masteries, which encompass all of the offensive ones here. Right. So that does not encompass defensive and armor ones. Shield is offensive. We'll get to that. Okay. And so let's move on to our next skill, Quick Slash. What is Quick Slash here? That is a much bigger number right there.
Yeah. Smaller now though.
Used to be really big.
Way stronger this skill. Yeah. So Quick Slash is actually it's actually when you distill like when you look at every other game, what is a person wielding a sword doing? Right. So this is actually what they're doing. I'm slashing you.
Yep.
Correct. And it's very simple. So actually that is kind of the main at least the kind of the main theme with swords right now, which is it's very simple and very like I can see exactly what like this is the ideal swordsman. So Quick Slash is one of those skills that's like that. And the damage is higher also. So it's also a higher ranking skill in comparison to Reef lah.
Yeah. Yep. So you have the mastery at okay, so let's compare a little bit, alright? So the tags are the same. So they're also strikes, they're also melee, they're also blade, they're also versatile. So both skills can be used with one hand, two hand, all good. Right? And then it's also a technique. The SP cost is also 1. However, masteries is a Bladearts 1, which means that you must have already picked up Reef to be able to learn Quick Slash here. Right? Requirements, same thing. MP cost, same thing. Right? And then here, okay, so we have melee weapon strike, same thing here. Melee, so inherits all of your weapons. Weapon, inherit your weapon. And then strike, you roll to hit the enemy. Right? In this case, it's a single enemy. So you're striking this one guy for 4 if you're using a single hand, or 6 if you're using with 2 hands. Right? And yeah, the great success and the critical success, you add up 1 damage, 2 damage. Right? So for context, HP is very low in Aeons of Adventure. A level 1 character can have something from 6 HP to 9 HP. Let me think. 7 plus, yes, 9, that's right. Quick math. Right, so if you look at this right here, if somebody crits you, he deals 9 damage. If you have no armor, you're dead. Right? So it's not that it's not that the damage is that it's not that there's no variance, right? It can still swing pretty wildly because 6 and 9, the difference is basically you get hit twice or once and you're dead, right? However, these things are predictable, and so these things are also mitigatable. So this allows you to position yourself in a way where you can avoid these damage if you know that it is deadly, right? And the thing is that most things will be deadly, right? So for whatever you can do, you should plan around avoiding damage, dealing damage, mitigating damage, or avoiding the fight altogether if you really need to avoid the fight.
So I to add on to that also, it also like kind of promote tactical positioning. So you do not want an enemy like to flank you, for example. Right. Because it might give them a bonus to advantage or something.
Right. So we haven't gone to the flanking.
We haven't gone to that yet.
So melees have a little bonus that we have yet to touch on yet, which is that melee characters can flank, right? So melee characters, melee creatures can flank other enemies. And what flanking means is that you have two creatures who are side by side against another creature. As long as they're not both in front of the enemy, you're basically flanking the enemy, right? And what happens is that when you melee strike, specifically melee strike, an enemy while they're being flanked, you don't have to roll a 6 to gain the great success effect. You still have to hit his evasion. But for example, the guy has an evasion of 8 and I roll like a 5-5, right? Even though usually I would not have the great success effect, because I'm flanking, I gain the great success effect by default. And that means that flanking is very deadly for melee characters, both against and for. Right, so you can do a lot of damage. You might also take a lot of damage. It is very risky, but it's a high risk, high reward kind of tactical play that we're trying to encourage here.
Yeah. So some additional clarification there is also right. When John mentioned that it's like not say guaranteed good success. It's actually just a guaranteed good success. So what that means is also right. If you roll a 6 and a 5, you only get
you only
success.
get one.
You don't get the crit success,
right?
Because that requires 2 6s.
Yep. Yeah. So the successes are states. They are true false. They're binary, right? So if you have it already, you can't gain it again, right? Yep. And so that is quick flash. Really simple, really quick, right? Let's move on to the next skill. And so this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. Now, what is this?
Okay. First of all, this is not so if you look at the breakdown of the mastery, right? So at the left side, right?
On the left, yes.
This is actually on the same level as quick slash. So what that means is actually you can, when you have a single point and you want to invest more into the Bladearts, you can choose. That first of all, okay, just to clarify that. So this is what it means, right? So you can choose either quick slash or deliverance.
Or and. You can choose
you can
both
choose
if you
both
want.
if you have the points.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. No, there's no one stopping you other than your mastery points itself. Yeah. So let's go into the text first, correct? So it has boon and blade. So what these texts are, right, actually is boon is actually so as the name suggests, is a good thing for you. Right? So it's like a buff or it's a buff. Yeah. I can't think of another word.
And typically boons are temporary.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in this case it will also state in the effect like for example if it lasts like X amount of turns or X amount of times, it will be stated there. Yeah, in the effect.
Yep.
But boon in general is a temporary effect and it's usually a bonus to you. Yeah. So blade is similarly you need a blade to do this. Then technique, as because, mastery, requirements, and because is the same as above. So now we go into the effects. So the effect here is your next blade strike gains an advantage and hits an additional type. This effect does not stack. This is actually with, let's say for example, you pick this up and then you take Reef, right? And you cast Deliverance before you use Reef. You, on your next blade strike, which is a Reef, because it contains the both properties blade and strike. Right? It gains an advantage, and so what advantage in our game is, right, is actually additional d6. So this is So additionally, like it's not really covered before, I'm not sure. Advantage stacks. So what that means is, right, this is your, if you have other sources of advantages, you will stack the advantage instead. So you have deliverance, and then you have like some form of like a buff that is like gives you an additional advantage. When you roll your reef, you're rolling 4d6, right?
Okay.
Because you have two advantages.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's advantage. And then you hit additional time. So what that means also is that you just hit additional time, you don't have to roll again. Yeah. So to put this whole thing into actual practical terms, it's when you cast deliverance and then you do a reef, you are rolling at base with just deliverance and reef, you're rolling 3d6, and the resolution here will be taking the two highest numbers. Yeah. And then you are dealing the damage twice.
Right.
Yeah. And it's two separate instances, not combined. So what that means is like it will be 3 damage and 3 damage, not 6.
Right.
Yeah. So that's very important. Yeah.
So if you look at the quick slash skill, right? So you'll notice that when it says great success, that it has a plus. And the effect doesn't have a plus. So when it doesn't have a plus, it means that it's an instance of damage. And with a plus, it adds on to the instance. So that single hit now does 1 more damage. However, in Deliverance case, I hit twice. So it is whatever that number was, and I hit it again without the strike. So I make 1 roll. So when it comes to advantage and disadvantage, right? Like advantage and disadvantage cancels out each other. So if you gain an advantage die and you gain a disadvantage die, it cancels out each other. So whichever is higher, so whether you have more advantage dice or whether you have more disadvantage dice, that ends up being whether you have advantage or disadvantage on the roll. So this applies to every roll, not just strikes, right?
So giving like a very extreme example, right? Like you have 3 disadvantages.
Yeah.
So what that means is you roll like 5d6 and then take the 2 lowest.
Right.
Similarly, if you have 3 advantages, you'll be rolling 5d6 and taking the 2 highest. And in a scenario where you have like 3 advantages and 2 disadvantages, you're rolling with 1 advantage, which means, right, you're rolling 3d6.
Yep.
Yeah. So like numbers.
Right. So I think like some of the guys who are more math savvy, you know, like if you're familiar, like this is not that different from just using your skill twice, isn't it?
That is yes, it's true. However, in the future, right, where the cost is cheaper, it might be more worth. For example, that, and you don't have to roll twice, which means your second attack might fail.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. Right. So on top of that, there's one more factor here, which is that yes, it hits twice, right? Which also means that modifiers apply twice. And we have enchantments and imbuements that are not available in Bladearts, but do add on this kind of like stacking on hit effect style sort of thing. If you're familiar, like when like in a MOBA, like what do you call it, Dota or League of Legends, you have attacks that add on flat amounts, and when you attack faster and faster, you know, these things can get pretty strong. So this is one of those things that we're adding here, and this applies to cleaves as well in Reeve's case.
And I want to like reiterate this point where because we are putting these skills low, right, it's actually to help you achieve that fantasy faster.
Yep.
So this is one of those skills that's why is it like you question why is it so low. Yeah.
So you can imagine like if you were to play like a sword and shield character, right? You could have put 2 mastery points into sword, pick up deliverance and reef, and then you can start putting points to your shield. And the whole time you're able to do your double cleaves while you're still holding up your shield and doing your shield moves that we have not gone through yet.
Basically not sandbagging.
That's right. Right. So these are some of the things that enable you to do more options at the start, right? And we don't want to put them at literally like the 0 point because some of these skills can get pretty powerful. So we have to stagger them a little bit, which which we'll see later, right? And so that's for deliverance. Well, fun fact. So deliverance used to be like the same skill with quick slash. Like they were combined together.
It used to be the good success of quick slash.
Yeah. So
No, I think that was not the strongest point about quick slash back then. The strongest point was it was a level 0 skill.
Yep. So
Yeah.
quick slash and reap used to be in opposite positions, and quick slash used to have the effect of the great success effect of quick slash being you use the attack again, which is
Yeah.
madness. It was madness. It was way
And
too
it was,
strong.
I think it was doing roughly the same damage. Like 4-6.
Yeah, pretty close.
Somewhere around there. I think maybe like the crit was like low or something like
Yeah,
that.
but the biggest cost is that it was 1 SP, right? So you can imagine if you have 3 SP and you're just there and you're swinging at the guy 6 times every single turn, like it was getting a bit out of hand,
Yeah.
right? So now it's still strong. It's still very strong, right? But it's much more manageable and controlled, right?
Yeah. I don't have to bloat the enemy's number now.
Yeah. So this is one
Yeah.
of those like outlier things that we had to adjust with. Yeah. Any type of like multi-hit multipliers are pretty scary.
Yeah.
Which
Especially because we are designing with the fact that we are like doing like a team buff or like a single player buff kind of situation.
Yep.
So you might have this sword guy which is like super buffed up, like
Mm.
crazy amount of like advantage, crazy amount of flat damage bonus, and then he slaps you one time, you just like disappear from the world.
You just slash him and then like multiple cards come out and then he just disappears. Right. So it's like Deliverance is if you guys are familiar with like AI Jitsu from like Japanese or like Far Eastern kind of sword arts, they'll like sheath their sword, then they do a single slice and it hits multiple times or whatever in fantasy, right? So that's the whole idea behind Deliverance, right? And you might have like in an anime or in like a movie where they pose with their weapon for a moment before like striking quickly, right? Same
So
kind of fantasy.
That was the exact kind of thing that we were looking at when we were thinking of what do we do for like the other skills. So like what will be cool. So posing in combat and then slashing is pretty cool.
Yep.
Right. So it's like we removed it from because we removed it from quick slash. After like I think our first playtest, we were like, this is ridiculous. So I think like first or second playtest,
I think we played quite a few playtests with it. Like there was quite a few, yeah. We did quite a few with the broken quick slash before we were like, okay, we need to change this thing. This thing's a bit messed up.
Then after we removed it out and then we were like, that idea of like additional attack is a cool and interesting way, but it should not be in a skill. Especially such a low level skill lah. Right?
Yep.
So that was when we came out with Deliverance instead. Yeah.
Okay, and so the next thing is where we get even
weirder. Not really that weird actually.
It's still reasonable.
It's reasonable.
It's a reasonable thing, right? So we have Mighty Throw, right? Now, this looks different.
In essence, it's still the same, right? In essence, it's still like a strike. However, this time it's no longer a melee strike. So what that means, right, is now it's not a melee strike. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's a range attack now. You might be questioning like a range attack with my blade. Like, how does that work? So in the effect itself, right, you will see that there's a range. The range is bolded, and what that numbers beside means the actual like distance.
Yep.
Right? Then weapon strike is still the same. The damage. Then the next few things, right, are kind of long, but it's the essence of what the skill is, which is like it's disrupting. It's kind of a disrupting strike in a sense. Right? So like you are striking the guy so that they are breaking their concentration. Yeah. That is the whole idea of Mighty Throw. Yep. I mean, initially it was I throw my sword at this guy. Yeah.
Pretty much. You throw your sword at the guy, right? Like you've always had like this whole. There's always this trope of like, oh, you know, the guy's running away, and then you throw your axe or you throw your sword at his back,
and then like steps into the guy's back and he dies.
But usually when you do that, it's not very good. Like in other RPGs, when you throw your weapon, it doesn't actually do that much, right? So we want to make it more epic, more impactful.
In other games, they just use like the base damage or something.
It's not even the sword damage. It's like improvised weapon throw or some shit like that, right? Okay, so like let's start with the range tag, right? So the range tag, I think for people who are familiar with TTRPGs and with Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, nothing new here. 30 feet effective range, 60 feet is the limit range, right? When you go from 30 to 60, you get disadvantage and stuff like that. If and an additional condition for range is that if the guy is like within 5 feet of you, you also get a disadvantage on it, right? So you start getting a little bit more difficult to throw the guy in your face, right? In that case, you should just lash him, right? And then it's still weapon strike. So this is a skill that uses your weapon, and you throw that weapon, right? Yeah, it deals 6 damage. Now, why is this allowed to deal 6 damage?
Because you have no weapon after that.
So this
It's
is
also cost 2. Yes.
right. So this is
That's-
also
that too.
our
Yeah.
first skill that we're revealing that costs 2 stamina points, right?
Yeah.
So this is not something you can just like willy-nilly throw your weapon away, right? Like that's not a thing. You're gonna be like, how do you throw your weapon away, right? So that is a 2 SP skill. Level 1 to 2, you have 2 SP only, right?
Mm.
So you throw your weapon, that's it. At level 3, you have 3 SP. Level 3 onwards, you have 3 SP, and then that allows you to move and throw, or strike and throw, or whatever. You can deliverance and throw, right? How does your axe hit the guy twice while in a single throw? I don't know, maybe it spins or something, right? But the idea is that it still hits them twice, right? Because it never said melee on deliverance, right? It says any blade strike,
Yes.
and mighty throw is a blade strike. So you can pose and then throw your axe or throw your sword or whatever it is, right? So that's range weapon strike, dealing 6 damage and 8 damage if you're reading 2 hands, right? So next thing, okay, the target gains a disadvantage. So we explained disadvantage just now. You give him an additional d6, and if he has disadvantage, he rolls the 2 lowest. On their concentration, same thing. If you're from other TTRPGs on Dungeons and Dragons, concentration is basically you have to maintain your concentration when doing certain things. And if you get hit or you get interrupted, you have to make a roll to see if you can maintain concentration. Now, Bladearts has no specific. One moment,
Oh. Right.
Bladeart has no channeled skills, so that's they don't have to concentrate on anything themselves. But this is mainly used against like other casters and whatnot, right? Okay. So that's concentration roll. And the last thing is you're disarmed. Right. So you throw your weapon, your weapon's gone, you gotta go pick it up.
Or you pick up another one.
Or you draw a second sword.
Yeah.
Right. So we had this thing where we had a player who was just carrying around a bunch of swords and axes, like within limit, of course, like realistically on his back. And he was just striking, using attacks with his magical weapon, and then he just picks up a sword and he throws it at the guy, and then sword's over there now, right? You continue on with your other weapon. So that is definitely an option. And yep, great success here, instantly breaks his concentration. So, but here's the thing, right? So it's a range attack, and you don't have the guaranteed great success from flanking. So this is much more difficult to do.
Yeah.
Unless you deliverance.
Or you have someone who gives you advantage. So you just raise the chances in general.
Foreshadowing again. Right. Okay. And so, yes, very painful skill, very powerful. If you crit, that's 12 damage. Straight. Right.
So I think this one also is a kind of a big thing with blades, where usually you kind of see the numbers to be slightly higher. However, you notice that there is almost no armor penetration. Yeah. So because we wanted to have a more damaging hit, and armor penetration is not really the ideal of swords in our in this current set at least. Yeah.
Just continue first. Shift this a little bit. I feel like this thing is moving. Like, maybe it's not locked.
No, it probably is moving because of the background.
I think it's not locked.
Do it later.
It's okay. Alright. Okay. And so that is Mighty Throw. To add on to that, right? So like one of the things we decided to do, like the different weapons, they have different amounts of armor penetration. Most weapons don't have armor penetration. Most skills don't have armor penetration. right? They are reserved for things that are meant to penetrate armor, right? So blunt weapons, certain types of ranged attacks are there to specifically pierce armor. But generally, especially for blade arts, you're going there to cleave through a bunch of enemies, go after this one guy, savage him to death, and then just like bail out, right? And be a threatening force, right? And blade arts generally faces difficulty against enemies with a bit of armor because the whole thing about blade arts is you hit multiple times, right? And having a little bit of armor reduces the effectiveness of your hit dramatically. Right?
So-
Imagine having 2 armor and you hit him twice. It's 4 damage less, right?
Especially on Reef.
Yep. So it's a armor here is pretty powerful against blades, which makes sense if you have blade and a blade hits you, not as useful unless you stab the guy, right? And we have stabbing weapons. Okay, and so we shall go on to the very last skill in blade arts, which is a riposte. Not sure if I said that right, but yes, riposte. So riposte is another unique one.
Yeah.
You can put it in the same category as deliverance, right? Where it's not a strike.
Rewinding that back a bit, right? So when we first created this tree, right? These skill trees, right? Blade Arts actually only had Reef, Quick Slash, and
Mighty Throw.
It used to be Toss.
Yeah.
It used to just be called Toss. I throw my
Yes.
weapon,
You throw your
right?
weapon at the guy, yeah.
So Riposte and Deliverance came like later when we were like trying to fill out as well as like make it more complete.
We wanted to level up the masteries. So we wanted to put in what are some fantasies that really encapsulates being a sword master, blade master. Right? And Riposte was one of them.
Yeah.
So Riposte looks even more different than Deliverance. What was Riposte?
The key difference here, right, is I think just now you mentioned we have reaction.
Yep.
So Riposte is the reaction skill in the Blade Arts family. Right. So what that means is this skill you usually do not use on your turn because it's a reaction. Right. So it's usually used on an enemy turn, which means you could technically, if you are going first, you could use all your stamina for about 3 stamina, right? So you quick slash the guy like 3 times. Then when it ends your turn, and then when it's the enemy's turn, you are able to riposte 3 times. Technically. Right. So it depends on what you do with it.
Well, just to clarify a bit, react is not on your enemy's turn. React is anytime it happens. Yeah. So if, for example, your ally were to hit you for some reason, you could technically react to his hit. I don't know why you would do that on your turn, but you could. You could. Maybe there's a new thread where I hit my own guy like 5 times.
And then I chain the damage out. Sounds like a shield thing, but may or may not be a thing.
There might be some tech there. Yeah.
Currently, I don't know, man. Yeah. Riposte is kind of more specific in that it's not immediate. It's not a flat like you react and slap the guy. In this case, it's like you react with an attack that is cheaper. Correct. So for example, in the wording here, right, it's -1 SP cost of a blade arts technique. So what it means, right, is for example, if I react, I could react a quick slash. And quick slash currently costs 1. Right. So you might ask, is it free now? Yes. It is free now. Correct. In the description it is. Right. However, if you try to throw mighty throw your weapon, sorry. Now it costs 1 instead. Yeah.
By the way, yes, you can riposte an arrow. So for example, like someone shoots you from afar and it's like and he's within 30 to 60 feet of you, right? So that's the caveat, right?
If it's a strike. If the arrow somehow is not a strike, then
no, I can melee strike and blast.
Oh yeah.
So an arrow, so a strike, yes, but only melee blast. You can't avoid like a fireball. Like a fireball comes, you can't riposte him. But if the arrow is a strike, yes, you can. So he flies by, he misses, and you're like, I see you, and then you throw your mighty throw. Yes, that works, right? At a -1 cost, so you cost 1 stamina point instead, right? Wait, have you gone through trade?
Oh, yeah. So it's a So there is another thing that's important also, which is this is the only trait. Yeah, this is the only trait here lah. So what trait means, right, is actually just a passive.
Yep.
Yeah. So
So traits are things that are always active lah. You can choose whether you want to do them or not, but they are generally always active.
Mm.
So in this case is that when a strike or melee blast misses you, now what's a blast? It's not, we don't have them on blades here, but blasts are basically when you dodge an attack. It's a saving throw in some other RPGs like D&D, right? But
think of it like AoEs.
yeah, so
Yeah.
generally AoEs or dodging like conditional effects, those are all blasts, right? Resistance effects. So blast is usually rolled by the receiver instead of the perpetrator lah.
Yeah.
So in Ripo's case, it's okay, like someone uses like a cleave against you that's not reef, or he uses reef and it misses, also works, right? And you manage to dodge it, and you're like, "Hoo!" And then you prepare, right? So you can either go into deliverance and then wait for the next one, or you can go straight into a quick slash. It also works. Or if you get hit twice, you can deliverance and then quick slash the guy for free, right? So it's all options. These are all tactical options that you can make. That you just have to kind of observe your stamina cost a little bit lah, right? In this case, it's all free here, but it also does play into the fact that what type of armor you wear, you might not want to take repose. So for example, repose is something that requires the enemy to miss you. If your evasion is very low, repose is not very useful, right? So for example, if you were to wear heavy armor, your evasion is typically going to be about 5. 5 is very low, right? Like you're rolling 2d6s. It is very easy to hit 5. You hit like a 2 and a 3, you hit 5. You roll any one of them, got 5, you pass already, right? So it's going to be very easy to hit someone with a 5. And that also means that repose almost never activates, except from blast, right? And so repose becomes much less valuable depending on your defensive types, right? So this is one of those things that we have options here, but depending on exactly what you're doing, you might not want to take a skill. You might want to take another skill, or for example, you can take quick slash and deliverance to get your rank up, to get mighty throw or whatnot. Yeah. So it's kind of what's a good way to put it? These are options lah. These are options. Yeah. You don't have to pick this. You don't have to linearly pick all of the skills within the Bladearts, basically.
Just to note that repose is actually the final skill in Bladearts, so you can just don't take the final skill.
Yep.
You could start invest, or you could continue investing in other tree stuff like that.
Pick another mastery. Yeah. Right. So you can pick up a shield, you can pick up a shout, you can pick up all kinds of things. So there are a total of 12 different core masteries that you can pick from in the basic set. Right. So as you can see, these are the 5 skills available for Bladearts, and they are the most typical kind of like fighter barbarian style play style kind of characters, where you're slashing fast, slashing a lot of people, slashing, throwing your weapon, slashing them, and then people missing you, you slash them again, right? So slash everybody, right? So if you want to just slash somebody, Bladearts is the mastery for you. All right. So is there anything else we need to cover here for Ripples?
Nothing really. I think that's mostly Bladearts for now. Moving forward, of course, we'll add more fantasy stuff like that. Yeah. And to 100% note, these texts and descriptions here are not finalized also. It's what we have currently. Most likely it's finalized lah, but yeah, I'm just saying this because we might still change certain things when we do more playtesting and stuff like that.
Disclaimer, everything that's shown in these streams in Tiny Table Talk, these are not final because these are things that we will keep developing and iterating on and changing stuff like art. Some of them is placeholder, the numbers, the naming, all these things. We're still gonna fine tune them, but the core kind of like design of the mastery has already been solidified for the most part, right? No, deliverance is not a concentration. Deliverance is a boon. So this is a boon that you activate, and then this is kind of like your next skill. So you can run around if you want, if it's on your turn, right? So you can run around, you can just make a strike here, make a strike there. All these things are still doable. And if someone hits you, you don't break concentration. I mean, it'll be maybe in the future we'll do like a concentration sword skill, but this is not it. This is not the one.
The concentration sword skill will be like, pose and then I pose for like a whole turn.
Right, or maybe like whirlwind or something, you know, where you're spinning
Yeah.
constantly, right? So something like that. But this is more like okay, I activate a
State of
stance.
mind.
Yeah, it's a stance lah to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the stance would strike. Oh, but okay, there are
There
stances.
are
So this
stats.
is not
Yeah.
a
So this
stance.
is not a stance. I
Right.
was gonna say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a buff.
Yeah.
Right. And so yep, so that is what the Bladearts Mastery is. So just to go through everything again. So Bladearts Mastery, you use swords, you use axes, one hand, two hand, and then your whole thing is to go in and be a slayer, slash through everything, cut through people, and there are some counter attacks, there are some high damaging moves, and this is the character that you want to do damage as a melee character, right? Against low armor targets.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could attack the high armor target. Yeah.
You could
No one's stopping you.
just not as effective.
Yeah.
Just not as effective.
But damage.
Right. So what are some like possibilities, right, that on top of the ones that we've already shown here, which is the Slayer and the Blazer, right? So what are some like other common combinations that you might have with the sword?
You have your Guardians, which is like sword and shield.
Yep.
Correct. And then you also have like those what? Ranger blade sword guys.
So like you have your
that's
melee
like,
and your bow and stuff like that.
yeah, or like melee with your pet.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh yeah, you can technically get a free deliverance from repose. Yes.
No, yes, you can. Yeah.
Yes, you can.
However, this is where deliverance, the second line, is very important.
Yep.
It does not stack.
Yes. So
Correct.
once
So
you have
if
activated
you deliverance
deliverance,
and then you deliverance again, you just wasted 1 SP somehow.
Yep.
Yeah. So that is a conscious decision then.
However, deliverance is not to the end of your turn or the next turn. It is until you use your next blade strike, right?
Which repulse isn't.
Yes, repulse is not a blade strike. So it is your next blade strike. So for example, let's say someone hits you once, you repulse, and then you deliverance, right? And then you repulse another attack somewhere, or it reaches your turn. You immediately have deliverance ready and you can just go. Right. So that is what is possible. You can do that. You can do quick slash, you can do reef, you can do everything. And that's part of the beauty of it, right? So a lot of these skills are meant to be as kind of flexible as possible, where you're able to like, oh, because I'm doing this thing, I'm doing that thing. They all interlink.
So I think also key point is also it says a blade strike. So in the future when you have different blade strikes, right?
Yep.
Or maybe for example, you have a blade strike on like other trees, I don't know, right? Then this actually works also.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So that is like kind of combination with other trees, in a way. Yeah.
So this is kind of like a sneak peek, which is that blade strike. What blade strike means is this is a strike with a blade, right? So technically, there are other masteries, right, where you also make strikes with a weapon. It does not say what weapon it is. It could be a blade, it could be a hammer, it could be whatever you want it to be, right? But if you use a blade and you make a strike with it, technically, deliverance applies.
Yeah.
Right. However, repulse doesn't allow you to use those techniques. So you can use repulse only on Bladearts techniques.
Correct.
Yep. So yeah, that's kind of like a little sneak peek into our cleric paladin, which is their very first skill, allows them to use any weapon to make a smite.
Yeah.
Right. So that means that technically it is just a melee weapon strike, but it doesn't have a required specific.
There's no
weapon.
Requirements. Yeah.
Yep. Well, the requirement is you must have a weapon.
But yeah, wielding a weapon.
Yeah, any weapon.
Yeah,
right.
any weapon,
So that's a little sneak. Yep. And so that is so yeah, you're saying there was like sword and shield, and then you have like the rangers, you have the bows and the swords, and then of course you have your spell blades, which is like you have your axes, your swords, and then you're also casting a spell. Maybe you enchant your weapon.
I think quite specifically here we put fire, right? Yeah, we put fire, but it's not only fire. So you could do like ice.
Yep.
Even just now we mentioned holy, correct? So you could have a smiting sword guy.
Yep.
Correct.
So if you want to be your traditional like paladin, inquisitor, right, you can take holy and take sword and just like smite the guy to death.
Then you have like your actual crusader, which is like your sword, shield, and holy magic. So that just nice fits the 3 mastery limit also.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what that also allows you to do is that, let's just say you have picked up sword and you picked up holy. Now sometimes you don't need so many points in a sword, so you can actually invest your points into holy. But in another scenario, you'll be like, oh, I don't actually need all of my holy skills currently, so I can lower the number of points inside and put them more into sword. So at any point in time, depending on your level and your mastery points available, you can kind of rebalance your swords and your masteries and whatever other masteries you have, right? So you can rebalance all of your points across them.
To reiterate that, you cannot spec out of the mastery though.
Yes.
Yeah. So you still have to have mastery in
Yes.
holy in all the things that you have picked up so far.
Yep.
Yeah. Unless you make a new character.
Yeah, or you die, right?
Yeah.
So that is the rough gist of it. So so some of the immediate, the most obvious synergies with Bladearts, right? So what we have just talked about are common fantasies and tropes, but let's get a little bit more mechanical into it, which is that the most obvious combination is, as mentioned, on hit effects. So this can come in the form of magical weapons, imbuements, and enhancements. And so we won't go too much into imbuements and enhancements right now, but just know that they are basically things that I apply an imbuement or enhancement onto an item. Some are temporary, some are permanent, and this allows the attacks to have additional effects. And so that is the most obvious synergy on top of things that allow you to increase your evasion with repulse and stuff like that. Yep. And so, is there anything else to add?
Nothing much. Like, this is truly the swordsman.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And so
very plain, very simple. You do exactly what it states, correct? There's no like, condition into condition before I do like 20 damage. This is just I do 20 damage.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
very simple, very easy to get into. Yeah.
Also, it's not just swordsman, it's also axeman, right?
Yeah, but
typically swords,
so,
yes.
There may be, I don't know, maybe in the future it's like there might be a specialization X, stuff like that. So you might see a tree in the future where it's more X feeling. So a cyclone may be X thing. It feels like X thing at least.
Yeah. But these are things that would still fit under Bladearts, but maybe the requirements may say wielding X specifically. Yeah. So that's a food for thought.
Yeah.
Right.
But these skills will still apply because they are targeting Bladearts or like melee strike, stuff like that.
Yep. Okay. And so with that is all for our deep dive on the Bladearts mastery today. And so that is the first of the masteries. We will continue to review more and more masteries every single week. Tentatively, the date is not Friday. We will do it on either Monday or Wednesday. Either of them. We'll see whichever is more suitable. Right. But yeah, that shall be all for our 5th episode of Tiny Table Talk. And so I'm John.
I'm Dayang.
And so we're signing out, and I'll see you next time.